Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting for July 25th, 2022. I'll call the meeting to order and state that we are all here in attendance. And before we move on, I would like to take a moment to recognize the passing of former Mayor Robin Jeffries, who passed away early this morning. Former Mayor Robin Jeffrey has a long history with the City of Belleville. She served as an alderman from 1968 to 1972, and as our city's mayor from 1973 to 1975. Some of Mayor Jeffrey's greatest accomplishments while serving the citizens of Belleville were to work with her council to address the opportunities and challenges of building a city that its citizens were proud to call home. Interacting with the people of Belleville, she loved meeting people and learning about their lives and sharing their love of the city. She worked with the Conservation Authority and the Department of Parks to preserve and develop the parklands for the citizens of Belleville to enjoy. In particular, she is proud of her contributions to preserving and developing the waterfront along the Bay of Quinte. She also was instrumental in saving and restoring the Glanmore National Historic Site. And she contributed greatly to the establishment of the twinning of Belleville and the city of Lahr, Germany, and serving as an ambassador for this international outreach program. She worked tirelessly to attract industry to the city of Belleville, and we mourn her passing. Details will be announced shortly regarding a celebration of life that we expect towards the end of August. But I do recall that it was just August the 29th, 2019, where we planted a new tree to celebrate her contributions to the city at the park that bears her name. And so I'll ask you all to just take a moment of silence as we remember Robin Jeffrey. Thank you. The flag at City Hall will be at half-staff later today and will remain at half-staff until next Tuesday, and then again on the day of her celebration of life. Thank you. You may be seated. Well, thank you everyone for attending our special meeting. For those folks that are watching at home on the streaming service, or if they're watching on your TV, they can go to the City of Belleville website at www.belleville.ca and click on the web streaming, and they'll take it to a calendar to today's meeting. The reports for today's meeting are all included in the agenda, as well as there's a hyperlink to the actual individual report. So we'll ask everyone to go there if they're looking for more information. I'll now ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Councillor Alsop?
Yes, 8A1.
All right, thank you. We'll deal with that first. Anyone else? Okay. So there are a number of items we will not be dealing with at today's meeting from our agenda. Items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8B, 8C, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we'll now go into Committee of the Whole, and I need a motion to go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself and the Chair. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. We'll move to 8A1, which Councillor Thompson or Alsop has declared a conflict. Thank you, Councillor. The agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from Council, and 8A1 is a contract award for the Riverside West BMX Pump Track Phase 1. The Operations Planning and Development Manager's report number MOPD 2022-09, and the resolution is that in accordance with Section 30.3, sole and single sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the quotation from Transition Bike Parks Incorporated be accepted for the design build proposal for the Riverside West BMX Pump Track in the total amount of $225,435, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor McCaw and Councillor Thompson. The information is included in your packages, colleagues. Anyone have any questions or comments on this? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, you're Committee of the Whole now.
Okay. So So I support the recommendation that's come forward, but this is phase one, and I just wanted to maybe clarify that the BMX track is actually a dual track, and it's in one direction rather than being a free flow track. Is that correct?
Mr. Reed?
Yes, that is correct. There'll also be some additions, some lines on some curves as well to outline the edge of the track, so that way for the safety of the participants.
So, yeah, so it's an excellent idea, and there is also, because this is phase one, there is also phase two and phase three. So in phase two, we will see another $150,000 come forward, and that's for a skills training area, providing some utility services as well as some pathways. And then in phase three, we'll probably spend about $50,000. We'll be doing a risk assessment of the track and look perhaps to put some fencing around it. So excellent project, and I fully support it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a question for Mr. Reed. I fully support this as well. And Mr. Reed, the question would be, once this is completed, what are the tourism or economic impact for possibly hosting provincial and national championships or competitions? I see this as a real win-win for the city with tourism and just expanding the invite for other communities.
That's correct, Councillor Kelly. There's lots of opportunities for groups to host local events here and have spin-offs for our local tourism groups.
All right, anyone else? Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 882, we'll get Councillor Allsap back in. While we're waiting for Councillor Allsap to come back in, I do want to welcome Andrea Steenberg, our new manager of taxation, back to the city. Congratulations, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us today. So 882, offer to sell lands to the city, 621 Dundas Street East, the former Bakelite property. It is the Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report Number DCS 2022-27, and the resolution is that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report Number DCS 2022-27, offer to sell lands to City, 621 Dundas Street East, the former Bakelite property. Council authorized the purchase of the subject lands by the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City accept those additional lands being proposed to be donated to the City, and that the 2022 capital budget be amended to include $3,150,000 of funding for the acquisition to be funded from the Capital Levy Reserve Fund, and that a bylaw be prepared for Council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Allsop. Colleagues, before I open it up, I just want to sort of maybe we'll run through a little bit of the history of the project and some of the documents that we have today. And I note that the Quinte Field naturalists are in the audience, and I'll ask one of the representatives come forward. But this has been a project that we have been working on now for quite some time. Started in 2019 when we met with Bernie Ouellette and Jerry DeRocco and Ian Brady, the principals of the site, who had been remediating it diligently for the past number of years. It proceeded forward through the planning committee to consider rezoning the northern portion of the property, and there was that beginning to have the discussions regarding what we might be able to do with some of it. There was a lot of feedback from residents when we went through that initial public meeting, and we have been working hard to try to ensure that this important ecosystem and the area drainage system is protected, as well as birds and wildlife and the wetlands. Last week, Council received a confidential briefing note, which included a report from Sierra Planning and Management with comments regarding the remediation, the verification of the remediation of the site, as well as an appraisal that was done by the property owners for that. In addition, today at your desks, you have a letter from Quinte Conservation supporting the the acquisition, as well as some renderings of what might be there. And I caution everybody, and we'll go through them in a moment, but I caution everybody, these renderings are not plans, they are not decisions that council's making. These are simply just to prompt us to start thinking and using our imagination of what might be in that area. What I'd like to do, if possible, is to get some of the slides or the pictures, if our IT department is ready. Perfect, thank you. And if we can start off with first, just to make folks at home and in the audience familiar with what we have. This is a photo of the map of the subject area. And so you can see the top part of it above the lime green line. That is the area that council rezoned to allow for development. And that is separate from the issue we're dealing with today. The remainder is what we're talking about today, including that lime green area, which is part of the property that is permitted to be developed. And the original intent of the property owners was to construct homes along that all the way down to the point. The lands on either side of it, to the east and to the west, those are the areas that are being proposed to be part of the eco-gift program. Next slide, please. Again, this is, that's the one there. So this is a different one which shows two important features. First, where that lime green area was on the previous map, sort of in the middle, that's the pond that we've taken a look at. And so all of you, my colleagues, have been gracious enough to come out, and we hiked the property, and that was the pond that we walked around, so you can see it clearly there. As well as at the bottom of the area, in the green area, that signifies the 10-acre water lot that is part of the old pier, as well as some of that shoreline area. To have everybody orientated where we are, the top left corner, which is pink in color, or purple in color, that is the land that City Council acquired some time ago. And that is the end of the Shirley Langer Trail that's being worked on now, where the loop goes around to return back. So the trail is coming along to there. There'll be that loop in the area where there'll be opportunities for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. And then we will speak shortly about extending the trail farther to the east to the foot of Hague Road. Next slide, please. So this is a map from Quinte Conservation that came in addition to the letter that they sent us today. And this is designed to show everybody the area in the middle, the sort of brownish color. That is what Quinte Conservation agrees is an area that is able to be developed. So this would include residential, servicing the entire area. And you can see that that really does impact the whole lower half, including the area that we had seen as the pond. I believe the next screen is the video that we had. We had some drone footage shot just to get up a little bit to be able to see the site and also see how the land factors into it. So. Okay, so if you can just freeze that, please. So again, you see in the top right corner, Area 1, that is an area that has been rezoned to allow for development, as well as Area 2 in the center. And then Area 3, which goes down the middle, is an area that we are looking at purchasing today. That'll be the topic of discussion. And then the two areas, Area 4 on either side, that's the area that is considered to be an eco-gift. I will mention that on the area, eco-gift area on the left side of your screen, there is a portion of that land that is not owned by Osprey Shores. There is a individual or a numbered company that owns a small portion of it that they purchased in 2015, and they are current on their payments with it. They're not able to do anything with that land, but we, depending what the decision of council is today, we may try to reach out to them and see what their intentions are. It does not impact our access to the site or to having the trails go through, but that was something that was a little bit of a surprise that came up when we were looking through it, but we're not concerned. Thank you. You can allow it to go again. Okay. So included in the package that was sent to council last week was, as I said, an opinion from Sierra Planning and Management, in which they basically gave us confirmation that in terms of the capacity to use these lands, that there were three ways that we can use it. Should the city purchase lands within the developable lands envelope, passive enjoyment of these lands for trail development is achievable with appropriate mitigation measures, for example, hard scraped trails and off-trail restrictions where appropriate. Further development of these lands for more substantial uses, such as an interpretive center, would necessitate more involved risks assessment, but results to date indicate that built structures on site are likely achievable. And then the third area that they offer their opinion on is that in the wetlands, the marsh areas, the potential use of that for trails will need to be designed to meet the requirements of the Quinte Conservation Authority or with them. And in this regard, developing trails through boardwalks will be highly appropriate and contribute significantly to waterfront aesthetics. So basically, that says that for either passive use, not doing anything with the property, the remediation is sufficient to allow for that. If there were limited uses such as hard surface trails in the area, that would be permissible, as well as should Quinte Conservation agree, everything from an elevated boardwalk network would be permitted, as well as things like shelters or washroom facilities or interpretive center to allow people to utilize it. So today, at your desk, there was a letter from Quinte Conservation, and that was sent late on Friday after I had already left for the day, and it's the letter, and there's just a couple things I want to highlight in it. We have been working with Quinte Conservation since the beginning. They were part of the original site visit that I and management and Quinte Conservation went out to take a look at early in 2020. In Mr. McNevin's letter today that was before us, he writes, understanding that a portion of the property will be developed for residential use. That is the northern part that we have already zoned and permitted. But they go on to talk about the rest of the site. Quinte Conservation staff are also aware that the City of Belleville is interested in acquiring a portion of the property to be protected as green space. Staff support this direction from the City of Belleville because the proposed green space area includes portion of Belleville Marsh, a provincially significant wetland, part of the Great Lakes Coastal Wetland Network, as well as other areas of wetland and floodplain that provide important habitat and natural features. Attached with this letter is a figure illustrating the development area that was agreed upon in 2012. Quinte Conservation recognizes that portions of the property are no longer being considered as part of the development area, specifically the Central Pond. Under a revised development area, the Central Pond would be considered part of the green space. The Central Pond area was excavated, disturbed, and not within the floodplain hazard because of historical activities. Recently, staff discussed the option to utilize portions of the Central Pond as part of the stormwater management for the property. Although supported in concept, this would need to be further studied in reference to development requirements and impacts. Quinte Conservation staff do not have any objection to the City of Belleville protecting portions of the former Bakelite property as green space. We understand the potential for some low-impact development activities within the green space, such as recreational trails, docking, boating, etc., that will allow the public an opportunity to utilize the Bay of Quinte. We will continue to work closely with the City of Belleville staff and property development team as this project unfolds. As always, our goal is to ensure that development activities are located in the appropriate areas and that natural hazards continue to be recognized and protected. The last thing I just wanted to sort of go through is the next piece. Do we have Mr. Smale's renderings electronically? So the last couple of weeks, John Smale, who is no stranger to us, he's done lots of work with us, came in to look at some renderings of potential uses. And again, as I stress that these are not plans, these are just designed to stretch your mind to be able to look at it. And for those that are watching or in the gallery, we'll just go through some of the work. This is actually my first time seeing this because I was out of the office this morning, but I really want to thank John Smale for coming and walking the area with me to see what is there, as well as working so hard. So again, this is the first map, which shows the entire property, including the water lots. Next slide, please. And again, this is sort of a legend of what might be. And there are basically, Mr. Smale's sort of threw quickly together 11 different concepts as part of this property that might happen, including an area for parking in the upper left corner, which is orange. That would be kind of a trailhead area where people could drive once we come to an agreement with CP Rail for the Farley Street crossing, but there would be parking there. That is at the end of the Shirley Langer Trail. But in addition, there would be some opportunity to have some administration and security, public washrooms, children's nature-themed play park, a Four Seasons activity pond, a common area with open parkland to allow for activities, open picnic areas, wetlands, nature trails and boardwalks, shelters and picnic tables, water activities and watercraft launches, and a pier, lookout, and fishing area. Next slide, please. So this is what a shelter might look like. This is kind of a greeting and information center when people were to arrive to this, this parkland. Next slide, please. This next slide depicts what a boardwalk or wayfinding station could look like in the future as we develop it. Again, a raised boardwalk area over some of the marshy areas. Next slide, please. Here you see an opportunity potentially on the road for picnicking and shelters around the pond area. Next slide, please. This shows what a winter scene may look like if permitted to have winter skating on the pond. Next slide, please. This would be a multi-use trail area and a marsh boardwalk. Again, you can see signage there to help describe what is in the area, whether it be birds or fauna, and to help people interact and enjoy it. Next slide, please. Again, this may be a little bit of a stretch, but potentially, depending with technology and use in the future, cantilevered lookout platforms that can actually go out over top of water areas or some of the marsh areas, if permissible. Next slide, please. This could be an information station. This area would be is suggested to be for bird watching, which would not just point out some of the birds, but explain what's significant about them. Next slide, please. And here again, we have another cantilevered lookout platform, which would be safely above environmentally sensitive areas, allowing people to experience it. Next slide, please. And this, it would be, looks more like a winter landscape where people could be enjoying this during the winter for nature walks. And then the last slide, please. And here you have sport fishing on the Bay of Quinte shoreline, which both could be on the shoreline or potentially on a pier if future council wanted to develop it, and if they came to terms with Quinte Conservation and the Provincial Ministry of the Environment. So again, those are not suggestions. They are they're designed to stimulate your mind to think about what might be able to happen with this 42-acre site. And I think that's all I have in terms of the introduction for this. The Quinte Field Naturalists are here, and I'd like to invite them to come forward now if they would like to say a few words about this, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions. Good afternoon, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Churcher, Corresponding Secretary of Quinte Field Naturalists. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of Quinte Field Naturalists, Mayor Panchak, and councillors. Quinte Field Naturalists would like to express support for the acquisition of the 8.4 acres situated between the two eco-gifts. As an organization committed to the conservation of natural spaces in the Quinte region, we view the expenditure of money to purchase the property as a very wise use of that money. Over time, the benefits derived from buying the land will far exceed the money spent in its acquisition. Let me explain some of the benefits. Firstly, the purchase of the land supports biodiversity. The two eco-gifts and the land between them create a contiguous corridor of natural habitats which can support a wide variety of plants and animals. In the area, 164 species of birds have been identified. Wetlands provide valuable habitat for turtles and other animals. We know that all 8 species of turtles in Ontario are at risk and need the space to live and reproduce. Without the purchase of the 8.4 acres, the natural surroundings would be fragmented, a condition which is detrimental to biodiversity. Animals require significant space to establish their territories and to move from one area to another to source food, to avoid competition, and to reproduce. The maintenance of biodiversity is essential for life on Earth. Each species is a part of a giant web, and each species has a role to play in maintaining a balanced system. Secondly, the acquisition of the 8.4 acres creates a buffer zone between residences and the Bay of Quinte, minimizing the risk of pollutants such as lawn fertilizers to run into the water. Thirdly, the natural environment provides many vital ecological functions which are of great value both monetarily and in terms of quality of life. For example, plants growing in the wetland habitat cleanse the water and filter out pollutants, thus serving as a natural water purifier and helping to guarantee ample fresh, clean water in this area. Also, shrubs, trees, and herbaceous plants protect shorelines from erosion and mitigate flood damage. Furthermore, plants store carbon dioxide as carbon in their tissues. By performing as key carbon sinks, they help to mitigate climate change and global warming. And finally, another ecological function is that plants give up oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, thus enriching the air that we breathe. And the fourth major point is that a contiguous corridor of natural space offers opportunities in recreation and education. A trail system could support activities such as walking, biking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, birding, lots of nature studies, and nature photography. A growing number of people interested in the natural world enjoy visiting locations that have rich, protected natural areas. Consequently, these destinations support tourism, citizen science, and research. In summary, the expenditure of money to purchase 8.4 acres of land has far-reaching benefits for the citizens of the Quinte area and for all species of life dwelling in the region, both now and for years to come. Quintefield Naturalists strongly supports and applauds the City of Belleville's leadership in their proactive proposal to purchase land that has such great value. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Appreciate you coming out today. This is a historic day for the City of Belleville. Being able to acquire 42 acres of green space to add to our community. I think it's fitting that we do it today after we honored Robin Jeffrey, who perhaps was one of the first mayors to work very, very closely with Quinte Conservation, designed to help our environment. And I'm excited to be able to bring this forward and to have this discussion. I look forward to our decision. I'm going to recognize Councillor Millette first on this, and then we'll all have an opportunity to ask questions and make our comments.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm honored to move this motion to purchase this property. The word historic gets thrown around quite a bit these days, but this is truly an historic opportunity in the city, for the city to purchase this property, and the generous offer. It's not often you hear generous offers and glowing terms for developers, but I think a little bit of recognition needs to go here for the owners of this property, Jerry DeRocco, Bernie Ouellette, and Ian Brady, and thank them very much for their cooperation and their understanding on the significance of this agreement that we're making today, because let's face it, they could have built on this entire area all the way to the water. They were permitted. There was little we could do, save go to war with them. And again, those aren't the kind of guys that anyone wants to go to war with, only because they're sharp guys. They're very, very astute businessmen, and they do the right thing. And in this case, they've taken this property that was less than 20 years ago probably one of the worst biohazards around the Great Lakes after the environmental crimes of Jim Sinclair, sorry. For anyone who has the memory, the city at one time had the opportunity to do what we're doing today on the Bay Shore, and acquire some acreage that is now, and this is not against the people who are living in this area, Pier 31 condos, which we all walk by on the Bay Shore Trail. For anyone who remembers, that was a wetland at one time. That property that those condominiums now sit on was backfilled by dozens of trucks that brought in filled in a wetland on our Bay Shore lands, all legal. Councils of the day, planning departments of the day approved it. We lost a wetland right in the heart of the city. This is the opportunity that we have now to do more than make up for what was done there. This reserve, this nature reserve, simply put, will help mitigate, as was pointed out by Ms. Churcher, the expansion of urban sprawl is a threat to our natural environment. This has the potential to be a jewel going forward if it sits fallow or if it's developed in the way that some of these concept plans. Either way, future generations will be able to enjoy it as they do the Frink Center and other natural areas. I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. I was very much privileged to share this in a meeting last week with city officials, the mayor, and our friends from Quintyfield Naturalists, who the smiles on their faces that this was going to happen is half the reward. I am so proud to support this today, and going forward, I'm going to enter into some discussion about possibly bringing forward a motion that in future we develop a reserve fund specifically targeted specifically for the acquisition, preservation, and conservation of significant natural lands in our urban and rural wards. I think the time has come whereby we need to do more of this, not just here, but in other areas where we can. We're seeing much development right now. We're seeing the subsequent funding that's coming with that from development charges. And we're seeing an awful lot of land taken up for development at a rate this city has never seen before. This is spectacularly significant. I would like to see us go forward by doing this on a regular basis, whenever, wherever we can, with the funds made available. But for now, I'm just thrilled as chair of the Green Task Force to support this, and it's a great step and a great gesture by the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions, and I'm certainly going to support it because we don't often get businessmen proposing to give us land for future development. So we need to take the opportunity. And, you know, I've lived here now for a little more 50 years, and the lecture we get most of the time as a councillor, what are we going to do with our waterfront? And we hear that over and over and over again. What do we do with our waterfront? We got a lot of waterfront, and this is one idea to expand our waterfront, to get the trails in. Our trails are, and I think our trails started with Mr. Doug Moses, and we've developed them, and this is another opportunity. So I'm certainly going to support it. A question, when you look at the map, when I'm looking at this map in particular, the area that's in the light green, that's the land that we're acquiring, right?
Well,
except for the pond, and we're buying that.
No, the pond area is what we're purchasing.
Yes, that's right.
And then the property owners are prepared to donate
Yes.
the areas on either side of it, which
Yes.
is in that light green area.
Okay. And the second question,
So, sorry, Councillor Thompson, just so everybody's, so in the end, this 8.8 acres plus the amount that's donated will end up being approximately 42 acres of area.
and the little piece of land that's owned by somebody else, and I just had it on the map here, do we feel we can still work around that little small piece of land that somebody else owns?
I'll ask Mr. McDonald to answer that question.
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, and for all of council's benefit, from my perspective, I think certainly it would be advantageous if the city or the developer owned that parcel. I think there are ways to, yes, still continue the trail without that parcel. And certainly in the future, staff may come back to council with a proposal to acquire that parcel, but I think the plans are still able to proceed without that piece.
And what's the size, anybody know the size of that piece of land? 1 acre, 2 acres?
Off the top, no, it's a, I would say it's between 8 and 10 acre piece.
And the developers, the gentlemen that are in the stadium here now, Jerry, Ian, and Bernie, the land that they're going to build on, what's the difference between where their land starts and for development and our trails? Like, is it 20 feet, 10 feet? Like, what's the space from where we start to where we finish?
Well, if you look at the map, there are some lines. That center area
Okay.
The line up top is again the approximate area. If you recall, Councillor Thompson, when Belleville Council approved the rezoning of the northern portion of the property,
Yeah.
it'll be the property owner's responsibility to have an east-west trail that will go from where the Shirley Langer Trail ends on the west side, across the property in a more, almost, I don't know if it's going to be a straight line, but certainly a line across to the east to where the foot of Hague Road, and then put that trail north. That still is to be negotiated because, they had proposed a development, they still have to submit the final site plan, and that'll be incorporated then.
No, I think it's a great idea. I just had a couple of questions. Let's move forward. If anything we can do to keep our waterfront and develop our waterfront, and trails is whatever, and if we get other land sometime in the future to develop for commercial or residential, that's our objective. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to voice my support for this project as well. Throughout my childhood and growing up in the city of Belleville, this land was always a very toxic piece of property, and I mean that in every sense of the word, both the ground contamination, the political and criminal nature of some of the activities that occurred there, and then the unsavory activities of going out there to take drugs and smash beer bottles. So now that we're at a point where we're looking at a great development along the waterfront in Osby Shores, the potential to purchase this land to make it into a great ecological area, and to further the wonderful attractions and amenities that we have on the waterfront by showcasing our great natural areas and our great waterfront here in Belleville. I think that this is a really great proposal. It's very well balanced. And I look forward to this being something that my kids can enjoy and their kids can enjoy, and pass on that legacy over the years of having this great, wonderful natural attraction right along our shores. So very excited about this and happy to support it today.
Okay. Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So I'll certainly echo the comments of Councillor Millett and Councillor Alsop and Thompson. This really is a legacy decision, and it's a legacy not for my children or my grandchildren, but it's for their children and generations yet to come. I was particularly struck by one of the comments that Ms. Churcher made when she was going through her point-by-point the support for the thing. She mentioned that for the ecosystem, this provides a quality of life. Well, it also provides a quality of life for the very residents that live here, and it's such a unique opportunity to be able to acquire this particular land on the waterfront. That certainly our thanks go to the current owners for bringing us forward and partnering with us. I had the opportunity a couple of weeks back to speak with Miss Lori Borthwick, and I see she's in the audience, and she's the president of the Green Party, as well as a member of the Friends of Bell Creek. And we had an interesting discussion about Bell Creek and this Osprey property. And so I'm glad that we had that discussion, and certainly you can hear the excitement from the Quintyfield naturalists. It's funny, when this proposal came forward and we did the tour, I took a look at some of the history in terms of what's Belleville's approach been to the development of the waterfront. And you can even go back as far back as, believe it or not, Federal Fishery Committee meetings in 2008, where representatives, the CAO and the mayor from the city, we're talking about how unique our waterfront was and how we needed to invest more money. And I know certainly it was on the radar screen for the last council. They were looking at it as well. So to be able to be part of a council that's going to be able to make this decision on behalf of all of our residents, I'm certainly so tickled pink that we're going to be able to transform words into actual actions. So I'm going to fully support it and look forward to the next steps.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Carter, did I see you put your hand up? Go ahead.
Thank you. So I got a couple of questions before comments. Part of the, in the report, it says one of the offers, conditional offer is that the city will work with Quinte Conservation Authority to allow the central pond to form part of the stormwater management pond. So typically, I guess the question needs to be asked is, and I know the answer, but I think it needs to be just said out loud. When a developer builds, they're required to build stormwater management pond as part of their development. And does those stormwater management ponds eventually become assets of the city as part of the development? If I could get staff to answer that.
Sure. Mr. Bove, do you want to take a shot at that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Carr, certainly any development that happens in the city that meets the technical requirement for stormwater management has to design and incorporate stormwater management into their development to the satisfaction of both the city and Quinte Conservation. In this particular case, the developers really aren't at the stage with their development where certainly I don't think staff here are aware anyways that they have looked at the stormwater management approach that will work on their site in any great detail, at least certainly not to the point where we could say for certain what it is they need and if that pond on the site has the ability to meet that need. I think our approach is if that pond will assist them, staff are supportive of it being used in conjunction with their stormwater plans. If it will not work for them, then they will have to provide whatever is required to meet the city and Quinte Conservation requirements on the land that they are developing.
So just to follow up, conceivably then, if it's determined as the plans unfold that that pond could be used for stormwater management purposes, then that stormwater management pond would become part of the city asset as part of the stormwater management.
It could very well be that case. I can tell you from the initial look at it from city staff's perspective, it may be a challenge for that pond to function to any type of degree that would solve the stormwater problem. I think the capacity of that pond is probably nowhere near what is going to be required for their site. They're developing a fairly large site that will create some significant runoff, and I'm not sure that pond is going to be enough to satisfy that.
So if that's not the case, then you could, and again, we're talking conceptually, so I'm not committing you, but through you, Mayor, then essentially they could build another pond, but may also require that existing pond, given the volume that's conceivably could occur at the development to the north?
You could certainly satisfy the stormwater requirements with a series of ponds on the site and off the site, and that ultimately may be what's required there.
Okay. And then the next question is that typically with developments, through you, Mayor, to staff, we're either asked through subdivision agreement that developers provide parkland or cash in lieu. Is that correct?
Microphone?
Yes, that is correct.
Turn your mic on.
Sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Carr, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. So looking at this, well, first of all, I want to say thanks to the residents who contacted me and provided some input. It certainly helps me represent them here today. The renderings that we have here today are new to all of our eyes, to my eyes. I haven't seen this before. I think it has great potential. I want to start by saying very clearly that as a board member on Quinte Conservation, certainly I take the role of that environmental protection agency serious. I sit on the regulation hearings as well, so we hear of attempts for infill, changes to shorelines, and it's very clear that in my role as a hearing member that we uphold the provincial regulations and the policies of Quinte Conservation, preserving shorelines, preserving natural areas. On a personal level, I enjoy nature. If you follow me on social media, I am usually in the woods or on water. In this past week, I have kayaked both the north and south shore of the Bay of Quinte. I have toured through a couple conservation areas and also Provincial Park, both walking and kayaking. So I say that to say that environment is important. It's important from the perspective of not only protecting wildlife and nature as it is, but it also has the human benefit. And so when I look at this at first blush, I think it's an excellent plan. However, I would be more enthusiastic if the development on the north was completed and we were looking at then inheriting lands to the south. The fact that we're being asked to basically accept provincially significant wetlands, we have to keep in mind that those provincially significant wetlands are protected regardless of ownership. And if there is modifications to those wetlands, they are enforceable. And I do know, being a board member on Quinte Conservation for 10.5 years now, Quinte Conservation does an excellent job when it comes to enforcing shoreline protection, provincial significant wetlands. So regardless of who owns that, that is protected, which is a good thing. We heard from the Quinte field naturalists, and I appreciate the newsletters that they send out. All the birds and wildlife that are in that location that need to be protected. It wasn't too long ago I was down in southwestern Ontario at Point Pelee National Park. Spent hours in there walking through their boardwalks and looking at the different birds and appreciating nature. This is exactly the same thing. It's trying to protect and preserve wildlife and natural settings. It provides an excellent filter for contaminants that may proceed to the bay. We all know that the Bay of Quinte was a considerable hotspot many years ago, was on the radar as was suggested. It's tremendously clean, and you know, you can see that if you spend any time on that water. It is crystal clean, which means is that all that natural habitat is doing what it's intended to do, and that's to filter things out and make it healthy. The problem is that we, to the north in that development area, we know there's contaminants there. And while we're being told that things are sedentary at this point, that may not always be the case. You know, the city has a history of managing hotspots, and you know, council's aware of many of them, and we've had to remediate. Talk about developing the shoreline, one of our biggest parks that we celebrate all kinds of activities in. You know, how was that park developed? Well, that was a landfill. And there's all kinds of weird and wonderful things underground there. And I recall 20 years ago when I sat around this table, we had to spend money to put in barriers along the shoreline to contain contaminants. And we've had to do similar things when we talk about the coal tar. And so my reservations on this one is simply, are we going to inherit an environmental risk that later, when we own the provincially significant wetlands, or we own that particular portion in the center, that suddenly we're going to be asked to do some remediation, which is going to add cost. And so, as far as I'm concerned, there's some liability there that as even the mayor's pointed out in the summary of the report that's not included in the agenda, it was in a confidential briefing note that talks about the fact that everything as is. But further investigation needs to occur. I think from a due diligence perspective, we're being asked to spend a lot of money, taxpayers' money, but without all the answers. If this development was proceeding where we had a subdivision agreement, we requested parkland as part of the compensation, which we do for developments. Here's an opportunity where we can ask for parkland. There's many developments where we take cash in lieu of simply because it can't fit. Well, we've seen renderings here today where a park land can fit. And so I think that should have been flushed out through the subdivision agreement. I think those plans could have worked a little further in terms of stormwater management to see how it impacts with the existing pond. We know that stormwater management ponds are not used as recreation facilities because of the changing nature of the water. So there's some variables there. Then, on top of that, the provincially significant wetland remains as is. And so it is protected. Again, as whether we own it or private individual own it, or it changes hands again. That designation never changes, that is protected. So if we were further along on the development on the northern side, and we were confident that things were going to stay sedentary underground, and that there was no chance of inheriting other risk down the road, I would be more inclined to proceed. Again, we have an opportunity to provide parkland through subdivision agreement, and then continue to protect that shoreline in the long term. So with that, and I appreciate the residents who provided some input. I've studied this since it came in Friday. Obviously, I've been thinking about it as we've been developing it, and we've had some conversations in camera on this one. I just have too much hesitation here to accept this without the development occurring on the front, the northern side, to know what we're going to inherit long-term in the south. So with that, I'll end my comments, and I'll request a recorded vote, please.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for discussion on this? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. As my colleagues have mentioned, today is a pretty exciting day, historic day on this Monday, the 25th of July. Just some comments on where we're at today and how we got here. I guess the mayor hit it right when he said it was 2019. It's been a long time with these conversations. I remember walking this area with Mayor Panchuk and having a good conversation about potential for the city if we were to move forward with purchasing the land. And I remember finishing up, maybe the mayor doesn't remember, but getting back to his vehicle, and Mayor Panchuk took a call from Dr. Oglaza. And we were in another pandemic situation, so the mayor left on his way. And here we are today discussing this. I, too, am a member of the Quinte Conservation. I'm on the board. And when Brad McNevin, the CAO of Quinte Conservation, and his team released this, I have all the faith in their work. And if you read it, it says, "We will continue to work closely with the City of Belleville staff and the property development team as this project unfolds. As always, our goal is to ensure that development activities are located in the appropriate areas and that natural hazards continue to be recognized and protected." So I know that Brad and his team went through a lot of effort, a lot of hours into being a part of the conversation today. So I want to thank Mr. McNevin and his team for that, because I respect everything that comes out of that building. Listening to Elizabeth from Quinte Fields Naturalist today speak, thank you for coming today. You spoke about the eco-gifts and the natural habitat in plants and animals. I took a lot of notes when you were speaking. 164 species of birds in the wetlands support their life, and the turtles that you touched on, that was really valuable information to me, because it's bringing humans, development, and we're keeping Mother Earth all happy in one spot. So to me, that really made a difference when you talked about the natural spaces. We received, just so everybody's on the same page, we received this information on Friday, and I look at the city and our waterfront, and I spend a lot of time biking, walking, enjoying all the activities, what our waterfront means to residents and our guests to our city, tourism factor. So I did some research over the weekend. 4 hotspots in Canada are under major waterfront development, and I spent some time at their cities: Halifax, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Hamilton. Halifax waterfront is their city's #1 destination for tourism. When people come, they go to their waterfront. We know the success of Toronto. We see it on the news all the time. Hamilton and Winnipeg, drawing people to their waterfront. When I look at the waterfront in the city today, I was there on the weekend, and I took some notes. We have a lot of energy there now. It seems like every weekend we have festivals, whether it's the Rotary Dance on a Saturday night or Canada Day celebrations or the pop-up. Trust me, the waterfront is our destination, and we can only continue to support it. Businesses now, the arts community, and now we're going to expand it even further with bike trails, and to get these photos blowing up today with parks, the potential for an outdoor rink, and that partnership with Quinte Conservation. I know as a former trustee 4 or 5 years ago, the conversations in schools was that schools want to do more with green space, getting kids out of the classroom and making their way. We see the success at the Frink Center. Thousands of children in 2022 and 23 will now get back to seeing what Mother Nature does to their studying, just how they feel. It's really a benefit to their health. So this new space that we're in the process of potentially signing off on today has so many rewards to the city. And I'm hoping if I'm blessed with grandchildren, that they'll have a chance to say that maybe their grandfather was a part of, a decision for many years to come. And it's a space where people are coming together. So I trust city staff, I trust Quinte Conservation, and my gut's telling me this is a win-win just for the community, economic benefits, social interaction, quality of life, and just think in years to come, walking trails, biking trails, new moms and dads with their baby carriage taking a long ride with their newborn. There's so much potential, and this is just going to make our future brighter. So I'm going to support this 100%.
Thank you. We have two more. I know Councillor Millette has another comment. I'll let them speak first. Councillor Millette, come to you. Councillor Feeney?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make the comment that from taking the tour back in the spring with Councillor McCaw and yourself.
Last year?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, last year. I mean, looking at the area and the potential and the significance of the decision that we're making today, I'm proud and pleased to be here and support it 100%. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor McCaw, do you have anything you want to say? Yeah.
Through you, and just as Councillor Feeney had mentioned, when we took that walk through that area, I've lived here my whole life. That area's been an eyesore for a long time. When I took that walk with you both through that area, I really thought it was far-fetched and a far-reaching goal that we would ever come to a place where we could get involved in a situation like this. So to be here today and looking at this, I would have to say I'm in full support of it. It is a win-win-win, no matter how you look at it. I mean, it's a beautiful spot now. It's going to be even more beautiful later as the development occurs, and they're not making waterfront anymore, and that is a beautiful place. These renderings were just terrific. I mean, it just makes me think of all the great things that we can do there. So, I'm grateful to everyone involved in bringing it forward, and I hope that we have support around the table. And I think I heard someone ask for a recorded vote, and I would as well, so thank you.
Councillor Millette, I know you wanted to maybe add in a comment or respond, and then I'm going to wrap up and we'll have Mr. McDonald take the recorded vote.
Yeah, very briefly, and great comments all around, and further to my colleague Councillor Carr's concerns about the perhaps toxic legacy. And I hate this to sound like Uncle Chris's story hour yet again, but I remember former Mayor George Zagoras when he had the city sell this property for $1. The city took this property for tax arrears when the Bakelite Corporation collapsed. There were no trustees to pay the taxes on this toxic legacy. The city inherited it for tax purposes, and Mayor Zagoras at the time sold it for $1 to Jim Sinclair. Well, anybody who followed the news saw with horror what ensued after that. And quietly, anybody who drove by saw him dismantling these buildings that are now just remnants. What we didn't see was the fact that he was scraping this area clean and basically draining the toxins, for the most part, out of this property into the Bay of Quinte. That pond that we are now inheriting was a pond that he had scraped clean for that exact purpose. This property has been tested, has been remediated. The current owners, and I'm not going to ask them to explain it, but I know for a fact, the current owners of this property inherited a property that, you know, in the environmental hearings that ensued, that convicted Sinclair of those horrible environmental crimes, heard that most all of the contaminants were allowed to run off simply into the bay. That kind of horror just can't be allowed to happen anymore. The current owners didn't buy a toxic site and plan to build on a toxic site. They have done their own very, very expensive, very thorough, remediation on that property. Listen, I'm not a fan of doing a $1 deal for a patch of toxic land. I'm convinced this is a good, clean legacy acquisition going forward. And again, you know, just the tragedy of Mayor Zagoras of the day to sell it for $1 to Jim Sinclair. We were having breakfast at the former mayor and myself at his family restaurant on Dundas Street. And I said to him, George, why in hell did you sell that property? And this is in hindsight, after Sinclair had done what he'd done. And George had tears in his eyes, and he said he was afraid of the carcinogenic nature of that land, and he allowed himself to be convinced that Sinclair was somehow going to clean it up. Well, we all saw what that happened, but the mayor at the time was still grieving the loss of his wife Diane from cancer, wanted this to be a clean legacy for the city. This is our opportunity to make that all right. And I'm convinced that with the eco gift, the portion that we're acquiring, the plans that the developers, who are very responsible business people, I think it all works. And I'm a skeptical SOB as can be by nature as a journalist, but I'm convinced that this is a good deal.
All right, thank you. Just my comments. I want to start off, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody who's been working so hard on this project. You know, since my first initial conversation in 2019 with the property owners, and then moving this on, there have been a lot of people. And so, you know, clearly we've got to thank the people who own the property now, who took it upon themselves as residents of the city to clean up what was there. You know, when we went on to discuss this potential, you know, it was repeated to me a number of times. They live in this city. They have children in this city. They have grandchildren in this city. They wanted to see this happen as much, so that was there. But our city staff equally worked hard, as well as staff at Quinte Conservation. And you know, I know people are saying about, you know, we just became aware of some of this information on Friday. Well, I can tell you that on Monday last week, that was the meeting that I had with our environmental consultants to review their findings. So that happened on Monday, and then we've been moving this forward. And the reason why it's important for us to move on this quickly is because the owners need a decision from us as to how we're going to proceed, because that dictates how they're going to proceed. As we said, and Quinte Conservation has shown, the area that we're purchasing is developable. They are allowed to build on it. And if we're not going to acquire it, then that's their plans. And so we need to make a decision to give them some certainty about what's going to be happening, and that's there. You know, Councillor Thompson mentioned earlier about you know, the comments we often get from residents regarding growth and development of the city, and you know, and trying to remember to have this. It is very much a balanced job that we have as we try to lead the future progress of the city. You know, we need to continue to grow, to be able to keep our community affordable and to give the services that residents want. But at the same time, we also need to remember that we don't want to live in a concrete jungle, an area that is devoid of nature. We need to celebrate it. And so that balance between development and preservation of green space happens all the time. And you know, there are many things that the residents aren't aware of what we do to try to help mitigate those items. This certainly is going to be the biggest calling card that we have. This is not just talking and explaining. There is proof positive of this council's commitment to the preservation of green space moving forward. We have an opportunity to have 42 acres of property on Lake Ontario or on the Bay of Quinte. I don't know of another community that would have that amount of area that they can be dealing with today. All other areas have been developed, and they built on them. And you can't go back and do this and get your second chance in that. We have an opportunity to do that. And we also are able to do this because we have a very strong working relationship with Quinte Conservation. And I know Councillor Kelly talked about Brad McNevin and his team, and I've got to tell you, they are so good to work with, where you know, we can come out and we can show them an area, and they were the first to come and to see the site. And they will cooperate as much as they legally are able to. They have responsibilities and requirements under provincial legislation to protect our environment. But they also see the benefit of involving and interacting, allowing people to interact with natural areas. And so they have been great to do it. This is our chance as a council. I know a lot of people have been talking about, oh, legacy, and you know, we're honored to be here, and we are. Because there are not many times that we get to step up to protect green space, to protect waterfront, to protect our essential marsh lands. And I am so proud that we are going to be taking that opportunity today. You know, the decision we have before us today is similar to those urban planners that may have contemplated something like Central Park. At the time, people thought that it was, why would you do that? Why would you spend the money? Why would you take on this amount of area? You can do so many other things with it. Well, they would have been misguided, because look at what an opportunity. Presqu'Île Park on Lake Ontario, not too far to the west of us. This is somewhat, when we start talking about what we have before us, we have something in between those two opportunities, and it's a very great place to be here, sitting in this seat, to be able to consider that. You know, when we walked the property, colleagues, I think almost all of us went down to the point where the old Bakelite Pier was, and we went down to the point. And every time I would go there, I would take the opportunity to go to the farthest part to the south, step on it, and turn back and look to the north. And I think I told all of you about what a magnificent site it is to be able to see the Bay Bridge far on the west. But then, you know, the pier, and then you look at the waterfront property coming all the way down to the foot of Herkimer, where the rowing club was, and Pier 21, and then you look at this area. And I talked about how we were stretching out the waterfront. This is our opportunity to stretch it out along the shore. And we're doing that not just for today, but more importantly for tomorrow, to see what can happen here. And this is a very, very historic day for us. It's not often that mayors and councils have the opportunity to do this. I'm sorry that we will not be unanimous in this, but I guess that's the way things go. I too am happy that we're having a recorded vote, and I'm pleased and proud of the legacy that we will leave. Sometimes people act through their words, and then that's all. Other people act through action. And today is certainly the day that we're taking action on this. Mr. McDonald, when you are ready, we'll have the vote, please.
Councillor Millette?
Yes.
Councillor McCaw?
Yes.
Councillor Sandison?
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Alsop,
Yes.
Counselor Carr,
No.
Counselor Feeney,
Yes.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Panchak,
Yes.
motion carries.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Ouellette, on behalf of the ownership group, is there anything that you would like to say? I'll give you an opportunity to do that. Of course, you heard us all. We're grateful to you and your partners for allowing us to be able to preserve this. But thank you for being here and for being cooperative.
Thank you. First of all, Elizabeth, thank you. Over the past 3 or 4 years, I have spoken to members of the Quinte Field Naturalists, but today you capitalized that extremely well, and that's what it's all about. My partners and I, Jerry DeRocco and Ian Brady, we've been involved with this property since 2011. Let me assure you that nothing will happen down there that will not be every T crossed and every I dotted. That's the way it is with the provincial government. That's the way it will be with municipal governments, and I can assure you we will do everything right. Thank you for the opportunity, and if I told you we took a big discount, that would be, after I heard everything, Jerry leaned over and said, I think it's worth a lot more money. Anyways, having said that, thank you very much. Mayor Panchak has heard me say this before, and this is the last closing comment. I go to Kingston from time to time and I look at the waterfront between on Ontario Street, between the Confederation Basin. You go all the way to McDonald Park before you see the waterfront. Why? Because in the 1970s, Fairbanks Morris was there and that property had some issues. It was purchased by an Ottawa developer, and today you see nothing but high-rises. That should be land and water that we would all enjoy. We have that chance down here, and you've just made that move. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Looking for a motion, Verizon report. Moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Alsap. All in favor, it's carried. A confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2022-108. A bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its special meeting held on July 25th, 2022 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of July 2022. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor, it's carried. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor, it's carried. Thank you, everybody.